Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mistakes Make Mythic. We are going into our blue set review today. Just gonna kind of get into it. The first video with white, explain my thoughts, and basically what we're doing is just going into this, giving each card a look, um, primary look. People are already doing pre-release streams, so that's fantastic. And the whole basis of this is to get you to do your own look into it. Mine are not going to be completely accurate. No one is going to be completely accurate. Whole idea is to compare what uh, you think is going to be good into how you play these cards and eventually build your own set of ranking scores for these cards. So let's just start off with Amazing Acrobatics here, or Drick's Interception for the MTGA folks. Another counterspell. Counterspell and or tap one or two target creatures. So it does have a little bit more flexibility. It does cost 3, so a little bit better than your average Joe counterspell. But again, these things, one for one and situational. So I think it'll be okay. You can use it, at the top end to get through. And if you tap 2 target creatures, so it does have more flexibility than other counter spells. So I'll give this kind of just a regular C. Go from there. All right, Beetle, Legacy Criminal, or Omen Path Arala, Hedron Scalar. Flying, one in the blue to exile this card, and then put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Gains flying until end of turn. So 4 for a 3/3 flyer. Not the best rate, but it does give you a little bit of evasion, so you're okay playing it on turn 4. I think this is going to be great in decks that graveyard decks where you can just shove this into the graveyard and not only connive if you're playing that, but also have a little bit of modification with the +1/+1 counter. So I think this is actually going to be pretty good in those decks. And that you're happy playing it, on curve for the 3/3 flyer. Problem I think is overall, we'll see how this plays out. A lot of removal does 3 or has -3. So we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna give this let's see, playable, not the worst. Fits in a deck, but nothing fantastic. Doc Ock, Sinister Scientist. As long as there are 8 or more cards in your graveyard, Doc Ock has base power and toughness. Sorry, or Ozor has base power and toughness 8/8, which is great. 8 or more cards, so not just creatures, lands, and other spells as well. As long as you control another villain, this creature has hexproof, so very easy in your blue and or black decks to have villains. And I think especially when you're late gaming, that 8/8 is no joke. 5 for a 4/5 at base, so not the best, but I think because it's so easy to get another villain, I'm actually going to give this a C+. I think it'll be a good top-end card, and one that will find a lot of play. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Here's a villain. Doc Ock's Henchman. Oh, and also, Beetle was also a villain, so we're already 3 villains in. Doc Ock's Henchman or Obscure Alley Lurkers. 3 for a 2/1 flash, and then whenever it attacks, it connives. So kind of going back to the Beetle Legacy Criminal here, that conniving is pretty interesting. But I think with such a weak base, it's going to be hard to get in always. And if you can get it once, you can fill your graveyard and maybe get this to a 3/2, which even then at 3 mana, I don't know if I really want to be doing that. I'm going to give this a D, and we'll see how things go. All right. Another villain. Mysterio's Phantasm or Phantasmal Vision. 2 for a 1/3. Flying Vigilance, and then whenever this creature attacks, mill a card. So this, 2 cost for a great rate, 1/3. Can chump block a few things and also have Vigilance always present. I think it's going to be pretty good. I'm gonna give this a C plus. Also, you can do a lot of things if it's a villain, has this mill effect. So I think it's gonna be quite good in a lot of blue decks. So I'm gonna give it a C plus. Oscorp Research Team or Pinnacle Research Team is 4 mana for a 1/5. So if we average that out, 4 mana for, you know, 2/4, 3/3, it's a little bit low rate. But the 7 mana to draw 2 cards, reminiscent of Biomechan Engineer in Edge, where it was 8 to draw 2 cards, and I think also create a token. So not as good because it doesn't give you an extra body, but it is harder to remove, especially with that 1/5 stat line. Though I guess regrettably, it is not a villain. So I think some people I've seen have written this card off. Um, I think if this set plays slow, which some people are thinking because of the pick 2 draft, it will play slower than the more aggressive decks that we've seen in the past, then I think this card may be in contention for a pretty good card to put in, your 4 slot. Of course, we'll have to see how many good 4 slot cards there are. So I'm actually going to give this a C. I think it's playable. I don't think it's as bad as some people think it is. All right, Spider-Man No More or Hide in Mundanity, one of Blue's first quote-unquote removal cards. Enchant creature for 2, and then that enchanted creature is a citizen with base power 1/1 without any other abilities. We've seen effects like this before for cheaper. I think for 2 mana, I'd want to at least get something on board. I don't think it's the worst. I don't think it's the best, but the problem is they still have their creature and they can attack, tap, they can web sling. So there's a lot of ways to get creatures back into hand in this set. So I'm actually going to give this a D plus. It is technically a, de-leveler. I wouldn't even say removal, but it can at least get rid of the ability of some powerful creatures. For 2 mana isn't terrible, but I don't think it's worth it too much. Now we have Unstable Experiment, which is 2 for target player draws a card, and then up to 1 target creature you control connives. I think this is great. This is almost like, what's that, 3 mana Battle Tactics or something from Final Fantasy, whereas 2 in a blue to draw 2 cards and put a +1/+1 counter on. So this is almost like that, but for cheaper. I think this is actually one of Blue's better cards. I'm gonna give this a C plus. You can also, it almost acts like as a mill as well. So, I mean, it does act as a mill. Sorry. Next card is Whoosh or Snatch Back. This card is fantastic. 2 for return target non-land permanent to its owner's hands, but 4 to do that and draw a card. So this is going to be amazing. This is better, I think, than even the usual 3 in a blue to return a creature and scry. This you just get the card. So I think this is actually going to be one of Blue's best cards, and I'm actually going to give this a B minus for the card draw and tempo that you get for it, for how cheap it is. Now we're moving into Blue's uncommons. We have Chameleon Master Disguise or Vazin Two-Faced Trickster. You may have it enter as a copy of another creature you control, except his name is different. So I originally thought that this was as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, which would make it infinitely more playable. But for 4, for a 2/3, or 3 Mayhem, it's good, I think, if you have another really good card, but so situational that I think I am not going to put this highly at all. So this is actually going to be a D plus in my regard. We'll see. And maybe there's great cards to copy, but it is a villain, which is okay. Next, we have Flying Octobot or Vexed Bots. One in a blue for 1/1 flyer, but whenever another villain controls, and we know there's a lot of villains, put a +1/+1 counter. It only triggers once each turn. So you can get out on turn 1, turn 2, you get a 2/2, which would be your rate. with Flyer. Uh, I don't think it's the worst. I don't think it's the best. I think C minus is a great place to start. Excuse me, to start it at. Fine to play. Will kind of probably chip in for damage as the game grows, and it can grow into a legitimate threat, especially with all the villains around. So maybe your opponent will want to deal with that at some point. But it grows a little too slow, I think, and starts off too weak, which is why I'm giving it C minus at first. All right, next we actually have one of, I think, Blue's best uncommons, Madam Web Clairvoyant, or Ulk's Mouth to Many Eyes. 4 and 2 blue, 6. Better be good for 6. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. All right. You may cast spider spells and non-creature spells from the top of your library. Okay. And then whenever you attack, you may mill a card. So you have very highly likable to play a card, and then if you want to kind of sort through everything, you can just attack. The great thing is the abilities come in as soon as the card comes in. You probably won't be able to play a card the first turn that this comes in, but afterwards I think it'll be fantastic. It'll probably be a must kill, and I think the stat line here is actually very good as a 4/4. There's only a few other removal spells that can deal with this beyond the 3 damage ones. So I'm gonna give this a B minus. We'll see where it goes from there. It does cost a little bit, so that's why I didn't give it a little bit higher. But but we'll see. All right, Robotics Mastery, 5 for a flash enchant creature, and then when this aura enters, create 2/1/1 colorless robot artifact creatures tokens with flying. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2. I actually really like this card. So let's see here. For 5, you're getting 2/2/2 flyers. So let's say that's 1 mana, 1 each. Then you have 3 mana for flash +2/+2, which isn't the best, but it can win you combat tricks, and then you get 2 extra permanents on the battlefield. I think that's fantastic. I'm actually gonna give this a B. People may not agree with me, but I think I think this is actually going to be one of Blue's best cards. All right, now we have School Days, or Outsmart the Amateur. 3 blue, 5 for an instant. Choose one. Draw 3 cards, or counter target spell and draw a card. Not the worst, right? This is kind of where we wanted the towns draw 3 cards thing from Final Fantasy to be at least 5, right, to make it worth it. So it's not going to be the worst. I don't think it's going to be the best, but it gives you a little bit to do, especially in late game. So late game, of course, this is going to be much more powerful to target, to immediately counter anything, better than things like Divert Disaster from Edge. In addition, you get to draw a card and just prevent it. So I think this is going to be like a C plus, especially if these games do end up being a little bit longer, than we're expecting. If they're going to drag out, then I think this is going to be better in the long run. So that's why I'm giving a C plus rather than something like a C or C minus. And then next up we have Secret Identity. Choose one. Until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a citizen with base power 1/1 and hexproof. Or excuse me, reveal until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a hero with 3/4 and flying with vigilance. Hard to say if I would ever cast this before combat to make my creature 3/4 to swing in with. It's definitely situational. That could win you the game at the very end if your opponent is completely tapped out. So I think most people are going to be using this for the 1/1 hexproof, and then of course the reveal as a combat trick. It does have a lot of flexibility for 1 mana, so I think it will be used more than most, and definitely the hexproof part I think is going to be very helpful in protecting your bigger creatures. So for one, I think the 2 or 3 cost hexproof cards in the past have not been so great. I think a 1 cost one is actually going to be quite good. So let's just give this a C. Definitely playable, but definitely is a workaround. Or very situational, sorry. Now we have Spider Bite Web Warden, or Argear Title Spinner. I think this is This is blue's best uncommon, I think, and I think probably blue's one of best blue's cards in as a whole. 3 mana for 2/2, but when it enters, return up to one target non-land permanent. So that's anything, not even just a creature. So I think that's fantastic. So I'm actually gonna give this a B plus. You're gonna want it in any blue deck. It's gonna give you tempo across the board. And even if it's not just your creatures, it can be your opponent's creatures as well. So I'm giving this a B plus, and we may even see it become one of the mythic uncommons of the set, kind of like Dubious Delicacy was in, or even the what was it the Kabu, where you could choose to make it a 4/3 or give you a 2. So that's definitely going to be there. Um, so that's blue as an overall. Not terrible. All right, let's move on to the rares. Again, I combined the rares and mythic, so it's a little out of order. But we'll start with the Clone Saga or Lost in Lit Jera. First one, Surveil 3, not terrible, but doesn't do anything in particular. This is going to be turn 4 or later. And then, but the second one is going to be fantastic, and you'll probably have something to play at that time. When you next cast a creature spell, copy it, so double, and then hopefully you can catch up if you did play this turn 4, and then choose a card name for 3 whenever a creature with a chosen name deals combat damage, draw a card. So if you have 2 flyers, you can swing in, draw 2 cards. So I think this is going to be great. Definitely going to be a card that blue wants to pick up. So, and you can easily splash for it. It's only 1 blue mana. So let's see here. Where is it? Clone Saga. Okay. I'm going to give this a B plus. I think it's just because it gives you so much on turn 2. I think that's why. All right. Next up is Hide on the Ceiling, or Spectral Restitching. X in the blue for exile X target artifacts and or creatures, and then return the exiled cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So can protect your, almost like phasing out, right? I guess. But can protect your own creatures if they, steal something, or you know, remove it, de-level a creature of yours. You can kind of get it back. You can use it almost as a neutralizer for board state. If the opponent looks like they're going to swing in for a massive amount. So it has a lot of flexibility. And I think that's what makes this card better than it actually looks, because of how flexible it is and for how cheap it is. You play this on turn 3 or turn 4 for 3 creatures, turn 9 for the whole board. I think it has a lot of flexibility. So for that reason, I'm actually going to give this a B. Okay, Hydro-Man Fluid Felon. This card I'm really looking forward to. 2 blue for a 2/2, and whenever you cast a blue spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. But that's any blue spell. At the beginning of your end step, becomes a land. So that's ramps you. Gets more powerful in the end game. So I think this is going to be one that's going to be amazing to play on turn 2. Obviously harder to play if you can't get in later, but then if you do have a lot of spells or even creatures in blue, this card is going to be hard to block. So I'm going to give Hydro-Man or Bellion, the Parched, a B. Because even at the end of the day, it's a mana rock. So, but I guess that's only at the end step, huh? But, there's a lot of other things that you can play. So I think it'll be good. All right. Lady Octopus, Inspired Inventor, or Murata, Neuron Hacker. For 1, you get a 0/2, and then whenever you draw your first or second, put an Ingenuity counter on Murata. Tap it to cast an artifact spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to the number of Ingenuity counters without paying its mana cost. So playing this on turn 1 is going to be incredible. By turn 10, you can play any artifact for free. Or sorry, not even turn 10, like turn 5 or 6. The poor stat line isn't the worst, I think, because your opponent's going to be worried about this having so much. Um, so I think it's going to be pretty good. Artifact spell from your hand, but I think you definitely need to be artifact heavy. This is going to go great into artifact decks in general, but for limited, again, we don't have that much. But I think because of the possibilities, this is a build around card for sure. I think this will end up being quite good. So I'm going to give it a B plus. Excuse me. All right, next up we have Mysterio, Master of Illusion, or the Watcher on the Road. 4, 3 and a blue, for a 3/3. When it enters, create a 3/3 blue illusion creature for villain for each non-token villain you control. So already you get 1 because you have Mysterio, and then exile those tokens when this card leaves. That's incredible. For 4 mana, you get 6/6 value. And then there are other cards that you can even, double this effect. I think this is one of the best cards in the set. So I'm actually going to give this an A. Next up, we have Spider Sense or Detect Intrusion. Counter target instant spell, sorcery spell, or triggered ability for only 2 mana. Or 1 blue if you return a tapped creature. So this is pretty good, I think. It's cheap, but again, it's a counter spell. So I think it's odd that this is in the rare slot. I don't think it's gonna be it's never gonna be game changing, but it can, if you're doing a lot of web slinging stuff, this is the only web slinging in blue that I've seen so far, beyond the multicolors, of course. So this will be interesting to see where it goes. I don't think it's that good because it's situational, so I'm going to give it a C. And then we have Imposter Syndrome for 4 and 2 blue. Whenever a non-token creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create a token, except it isn't legendary. So you would play this when you're going to chip in for damage, and then you double that creature. It's pretty insane, unless you don't have a board state. So I think because you need a board state and this costs so much, it's gonna be what to say. You have to get in, which won't be hard if, of course, if you're ahead. But it's one of those cards where it's like if you're ahead already, you need to be ahead even more. It doesn't hurt, but you're probably already winning the game at that point. I'm gonna give it a B plus. I think it hasn't hit that A range for me just because how costly it costs, and it doesn't change the board at all. You need to chip in for it. All right, Norman Osborn looks fantastic. So does Gobin, Gene Splice Savant. 2 mana for can't be blocked for a 1/1, and then whenever it deals damage to a player, he connives. So this obviously mixed with Imposter Syndrome would be insane. It continues to build itself up. Should be a must remove. And then for 4, you transform it as a sorcery to get what? You get, oh, right, the meme card, Fleam. Flying Menace. Spells from your graveyard cost 2 less, and then each non-land card has Mayhem. So, with 2 less. So that's incredible for 3. And then you would, I think you still can have the counters when you transform. Don't quote me on that. So Flying Menace versus Unblockable Pump. You could play at any side. I think this is going to be, again, one of Blue's best cards. So I'm going to give this an A as well. I think that does it for Blue. Again, we do have a much more limited card pool, but I think, again, it's going to be pretty fun. I think, looking at this, we have Blue's looking pretty strong, especially. And then let's take a look. It does not have removal. I think going back to everything else, we have a couple counter spells. We have Hide on the Ceiling, not really a removal. Of course, we have your bounce spells and Spider Bite, which is amazing, but it's still only just a bounce spell. Um, what else? I do have a couple of Mayhem cards, so if you're building that kind of deck, blue is going to be there. Conniving, Spider-Man No More is the only kind of not even a true removal. Like at least we had a couple in Shatter or whatever in Edge. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. On to the next.